Robertson charges he was sandbagged by the Swaggart scandal. South Dakota and Minnesota make their choices, and there are taxing questions tonight for the IRS.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. No doubt about it, former television evangelist Pat Robertson is a major player in the race for the Republican presidential nomination, finishing second in Iowa and expecting to do well throughout the South on Super Tuesday, March 8th. But now there's a sex scandal involving another television preacher, Jimmy Swaggart. And as NBC's Bob Kerr reports tonight, Robertson believes the vice president had something to do with the timing.
At first on his three-day campaign swing here, Pat Robertson sidestepped questions about the Swaggart scandal, insisting it would not affect him. After all, Robertson is taking pains not to advertise himself as a former TV evangelist. In fact, he bristles at the label, something not unnoticed by today's Charlotte Observer. But as the Robertson motorcade rolled through South Carolina's Bible Belt, sharing page one with Swaggart, constant questions about the scandal have become what one Robertson aide called a source of frustration. Today, the candidate lashed out, charging that someone planned the timing of the scandal to embarrass him. Robertson strongly suggested it was the Bush campaign.
Knowing the quality of the people surrounding George Bush, there is nothing that I would not believe that they would do sleazy. Do you really think this thing is accidental that it came out 2 weeks before this election? Of course not. It absolutely means he's weak. He has to know what's going on. I mean, there's no question about it.
In Missouri today, Vice President Bush denied any connection with the Swaggart story.
It's crazy. It's an absurd charge.
In fact, a top Robertson aide says there's absolutely no evidence of Bush campaign involvement in the Swaggart story. It was simply a suggestion by a reporter that the aide said got into Robertson's brain. Another case of Robertson making a serious charge, but offering no proof to back it up. 9 days ago, Robertson stunned everyone during a debate by claiming to have information that there are Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba.
Are you at liberty to say what the source of this information was?
In the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but that's a source that I have.
The Reagan administration denied Robertson's missile story, and Robertson offered no further proof.
And I crown you, Pat Robertson, King of America.
He is campaigning now in the region that has the highest percentage of fundamentalist Christians. In South Carolina, he calls it a two-man race, Bush and him. And though Robertson campaigns on several issues, here he emphasizes his main theme, a return to moral values.
It is absolutely imperative that we bring God back into the public schools of America.
Although Robertson's background as a TV evangelist ensured he'd be asked about the Swaggart scandal, his handling of it generates even more controversy. Bob Kerr, NBC News, Aiken, South Carolina.
As for Swaggart, even though church elders have placed him on probation for 2 years and barred him from preaching for 3 months, he won't disappear from the television screen. Swaggart has on videotape enough religious programming to keep him on the air for 6 months. Tonight, the presidential campaigns are centered in South Dakota and Minnesota. And as NBC's Ken Bodie reports now, there's a close battle for second among Republicans and a real duel for first among Democrats.
I declare the polls open.
Voters in South Dakota's primary. In Minnesota, the caucuses meet tonight. These two contests are stepping stones to Super Tuesday for some candidates. Vice President Bush once said they were important states. But Bush abandoned the fight here. His spokesman said it wasn't important in the national scheme of things.
I don't know where George Bush is. I couldn't find him yesterday in Wyoming. Couldn't find him in South Dakota. Couldn't find him in Minnesota. Must be somewhere.
Dole he hopes to win both states. But Robertson is expected to capitalize on strong right-to-life movements here. He is using his find 8 friends and bring them to the caucuses technique in Minnesota, which works so well in Iowa. Jack Kemp also spent lots of time in Minnesota churches.
We must have not only a government that defends freedom, we must have a government that defends the right to life.
Kemp and Robertson in a fight for the right to life vote and for the title Mr. Conservative. On the Democratic side, things got rough. Gebhardt got a key endorsement from South Dakota's Senator Tom Daschle. He ran tough ads suggesting the caucus of Massachusetts doesn't understand agriculture.
He says our farmers have to diversify and grow blueberries, flowers, and Belgian endive.
Dukakis called the ads a desperate, frantic tactic.
Gebhardt tried that in New Hampshire, and so did Simon, and it didn't work.
Dukakis has spent the most time and money in both states, building the highest hopes for a sweep. Albert Gore Jr. is planning a sneak attack, spending money on South Dakota TV while telling Southern voters it all begins on Super Tuesday. It will either be a strike or a strikeout. Jesse Jackson is hoping to show once again that he can build a white farmer labor coalition. Jackson has also appealed for South Dakota's sizable Indian vote on the reservations.
What limits us is our shortage of dreams.
Paul Simon concedes that he has little chance to win either state, but he campaigns here invoking the name and the spirit of the Democrats' regional favorite son, Hubert Humphrey. South Dakota and Minnesota get their chance to winnow the field today, minus a couple of candidates who ducked the fight. Ken Bodie, NBC News, Minneapolis.
And there are new questions tonight about what Vice President Bush knew about the Iran-Contra affair and when he knew. These questions grew out of a deposition given by his chief of staff to the Tower Commission, a deposition released today at the request of NBC News. It deals with the Vice President's meeting with Amron Nir, an Israeli middleman. As NBC's John Dancy reports now, this deposition makes it clear the arms for hostages were discussed in the presence of the Vice President.
Bush's top aide, Chief of Staff Craig Fuller, attended the meeting with Nir and took notes. Those notes, published in the Tower Commission report, show Nir laying out a deal that would have the U.S. trade arms for the release of American hostages in Lebanon. Bush has maintained he did not understand what Nir was talking about.
I did not know all the details. When he started talking about details of it, some of them I knew about, some I didn't.
But Fuller's sworn deposition to the Iran-Contra Committee shows that Fuller, at least, understood immediately that Nir was talking about a swap of arms for hostages. Committee counsel Richard Leon asked Fuller, "So, this meeting was the first time that you saw a link between delivery of weapons and releasing of hostages?" Fuller, "That is correct. It is the first time." That meeting took place in July of 1987. Bush has maintained he did not understand that the U.S. was involved in an arms for hostages deal until December. Fuller's testimony seems to directly contradict that of his boss. But Fuller said today that in his testimony, he was speaking only for himself, not the Vice President. Bush has portrayed himself as almost a bystander during the Iran arms sale period, maintaining he was out of the loop and was deliberately excluded from key meetings on the Iran arms sale. Oliver North set up the meeting between Bush and Nir. Fuller testified that North told him at the time Bush was fully aware of a highly classified effort that involved our reaching out to Iran involving the U.S. hostages. Fuller said that is consistent with Bush's past statements, that he knew of the Iran initiative without knowing all the details. But Fuller's testimony will inevitably raise new questions about just when George Bush knew the United States was trading arms for hostages. John Dancy, NBC News, at the U.S. Capitol.
Also coming up here tonight on NBC Nightly News, Mexico City, capital of a nation and the smog capital of the world. Don Oliver on the serious health risk, which is only getting worse. And Jim Bitterman tonight on the Japanese fascination with our language. Fascination, not mastery.
For Post Natural Brand Flakes, Lena Horne on getting the best out of life.
Taking care of my voice, body, and taste buds is what keeps the brass in this horn.
Reach for the best tasting high fiber bran flake. Post Bran Flakes at their best.
What could top an antacid that works great, that's sodium free and calcium rich? Great cherry taste. Cherry flavored calcium rich Rolaids antacid. The relief you want, the taste you desire.
There's never been a crisp like this. It's crispy. Wheats and raisins.
Honey-touched flakes that stay crispier in milk than any other raisin cereal. Look for the coupon in this Sunday's paper.
Where does it hurt?
Here.
For indigestion, heartburn, and gas, nobody does as much as Malox Plus. Dose for dose, it neutralizes more than any regular strength antacid and dissolves gas. Nobody does as much as Malox Plus.
If you call the IRS for help with your tax return, be warned. The chances are better than 1 in 3 that the answers you get will be wrong. That's according to a study by the investigative arm of Congress, and questions about those results were raised today by a House subcommittee. And as NBC's Irving R. Levine reports tonight, the congressmen were not thrilled with the answers they got either.
All right, well, since you have employees, you are required to file the 941.
The General Accounting Office survey found that IRS operators are giving incorrect answers to 39% of questions asked.
Yeah, you got 3 years to do that.
And the line is often busy. IRS Commissioner Lawrence Gibbs acknowledges that many taxpayers are getting wrong information, but claims that happens only 25% of the time.
When you have 25% of your all-in numbers are incorrect, that's an admission that we've got a great improvement to make.
You're absolutely right on taxpayer service. I'm not satisfied with 3 out of 4. That needs to get better.
Other unofficial tests of IRS accuracy produced an even greater percentage of errors. Money Magazine claims that 45% of answers to 10 questions it asked were wrong. The Wall Street Journal reports 80% of its questions got incomplete or wrong answers. Or a busy signal. Gibbs blames the problem on tax reform.
When you have one of the largest tax acts that we've ever had in this country, you're going to have problems.
Tax preparers like Fraser O'Neill agree.
And it's a little more complicated. They've changed some of the itemized deductions.
More complicated because the new tax law fills 2 volumes and has resulted in 48 new tax forms and 162 changes in existing forms. The complexity has slowed down filing of returns. The number received is running 10% behind last year at this time. The IRS is using what may appear a scare tactic to get people to file early.
Into a private horror of your own making. All because you're leaving your taxes for the last minute.
The IRS warns taxpayers to keep a record of when you called and the name of the IRS employee who answered your question. That information may help you avoid a penalty if you pay too little tax because you got a wrong answer. And says the IRS, if you get a busy signal, try again and again. Irving R. Levine, NBC News, Washington.
Texaco agreed today to pay the government $1.25 billion to settle claims that the company overcharged customers for oil products during the price control years of 1973 to 1981. These payments will be spread out over the next 5.5 years. It was 5 years ago that farmer Dean Flannery of Guthrie Center, Iowa, was driven into bankruptcy. But today, things started looking up for Flannery. He hit the first Lotto America jackpot for $3 million, and he says he'll use the money to help save the family farm.
New Caffrey toothpaste decaffeinates your smile.
Coffee and tea can stain your smile, like they stain your cup.
New Caffrey gets out coffee and tea stains better than the leading toothpaste. Caffrey decaffeinates your smile every day, toothpaste or gel.
What'll it be? Nothing, honey.
Ooh, just stop by to see me, huh, sugar?
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch.
This tastes good.
It's nut and honey.
Well, still good.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch.
Delicious cereal, Jensen. What is it?
Nut and honey.
You love the honey, you love the nuts.
When you've got the taste of nuts and honey all wrapped up in a hearty crunch, what more can you say?
Hey, Cookie, what's for breakfast?
Nut and honey.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch. We know how. We know how you love shrimp.
A great deal of shrimp. Whoa, what a deal.
Even kids love shrimp.
Shrimp, 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 shrimp. Did we say shrimp? Just checking.
We know how you love shrimp.
The Red Lobster Shrimp Festival. Try the shrimp and crab leg feast, just $10.95 on Fridays and Saturdays only.